The following episode features Ruben Arias. Am I pronouncing it right?
Very well, yes.
Great. The founder of Beereaders, a digital platform which empowers Spanish-speaking K-12 students to achieve their maximum potential by improving their Spanish communication skills. Ruben is from Chile and has been an edtech entrepreneur for over 12 years. After earning his degree in engineering, he chose to focus on education as a way of helping to drive change for low-income students. To date, Ruben has created edtech products that have served over 500,000 K-12 Spanish-speaking students in Latin America and the United States. So thank you for coming on this podcast. I generally don't dive very deep into people's backgrounds, but your background is very interesting and important for your startup. So tell me more about Chile, your upbringing, coming from a low-income family, and what education was like there, how it affected your journey, and how you got to the United States.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lucy, for having me. I was born in a low middle-class family, probably you can call it. Education in Chile is actually a very good education system. Mm-hmm. Overall, the best in Latin America by far, but numbers may be lying sometimes, and there are some realities that get probably forgotten in the process of analyzing numbers. So I think I was one of those cases because probably most of the students have access to education right now. There are very good infrastructure most of the times. Schools have access to devices and connectivity. But the education process not necessarily is very good. It's still an old-fashioned system where the teacher lectures the students on something. Of course, there are some exemptions, but most of the time that's the case. So the system today, as it was 20, 30 years ago when I was a student, is still struggling with engagement, how you motivate your students to learn more, how you take care of diversity, because the classroom, it's very diverse. And at the same time, the system overall struggles with low salaries for educators, for instance. So it's very hard to also attract top talent into the classroom. So that's sort of the general picture. Mm-hmm.
Is the education public? What's the split between public-private?
It's the most similar system that you would find in the world to the U.S. So we have public schools that today are decentralized. They make decisions at a district level, at a school level. It's around 45% of the total enrollment in Chile attends public schools. Then you have around 10% of private schools, typically tuition between 500 and 1,000 per month. And then you have charter schools that take care of the other 45% of the population. Those schools typically receive money from the government or the state, and then they have the freedom to make decisions. So they can hire products or companies to provide some services. So that's where most of our customers, for instance, belong to, because they have the freedom to make decisions. They have the budget as well. They charge families a little bit in some cases. Most of the cases they are for free. So it's it's for us kind of a better partnership that we can establish there.
Would you say charter schools are the best or private schools?
Private schools. There used to be what was called some flagship schools, public schools in Chile. I had the privilege to attend one of those. They worked with the lowest income families in the country. They were, of course, selecting students. Yeah. So you had to pass a number of tests, and I had the chance to attend one of those. But those schools, after the massive riots and the social explosion that happened in my country in 2019, most of those schools were kind of struggling with kids didn't want to do classes anymore. Teachers were protesting as well.
What was the protest about?
I have to say the social economical system the country has, which is neoliberalism. So they were very, very upset, and the country still is, about the way the government has handled economic growth, for instance, being so despair and unfair the way you live there. If you don't have money, basically you are nothing, and you are struggling for life. You cannot eat barely. You can barely eat. So it's very hard. The protest began because public transportation fees raised again. So it was like I don't know, maybe tenths of a cent that raised, but it was like for the 10th consecutive time in a short period of time. And then people was like, okay, enough is enough. Salaries are not growing. The cost of life, Chile is by far the most expensive country in Latin America. Sometimes it's even more expensive than Austin, believe it or not.
Wow.
So housing is not affordable, of course not. Healthcare, even though it's better than in the US, it's still very, very expensive. Well, I mentioned private schools, the tuition they charge, it's ridiculous as well. So people was protesting, and it's protesting still about the same. So those flagship schools tend to disappear. It's like another public school. It's not no privilege they said. So it's kind of weird, a weird combination of factors, I have to say.
Mm-hmm. So do kids generally want to emigrate? Do the majority of them want to come to the United States? Is that a common pattern?
It was not. It was not. It was not. Chile was always the safest, cleanest, best country in Latin America to live. So immigration, my generation at least, didn't migrate to the U.S. mostly. Sometimes Australia or Ireland or Canada, because we have these working holidays programs with all of those countries. So most of my friends that studied or worked abroad were there for 5 years, and then they came back to Chile. This newest generation probably may have a different opinion about it. Chile was always receiving a lot of immigration from neighbor countries. In the last 10 years, or maybe 15 years, we received a lot of Colombian and Venezuelans, of course, and people from
So life is better than Venezuela in Chile?
Yeah, there's no point of
no comparison
at all. Not at all. If you look at the quality of life index, you would see that Santiago is the top in Latin America, capital city, sometimes compared to some European cities. And overall, in the last, 2 years ago probably, Chile and Greece were almost at the same time,
wow.
economy-wise or social justice-wise, if you want.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So you studied high school in Chile and university in Chile or in the US?
Chile as well.
How did you get to the US then? It's very difficult. If you don't come here for university, it's almost impossible to get a work visa. And I'm going through it now.
I'm very weird. I'm a weird case. I'm an outlier.
Tell me.
So my dream was always coming to the US for higher education. I applied for Stanford, actually. And the very last minute, I decided not to come because I started my first company in 2010. So I won a scholarship. To
Stanford?
No, with my government. The Ministry of Education started a scholarship program for engineering professionals in their last year of their career or first year at work, so you could learn English. So I had 6 months of a very intensive program. I had classes 6 days a week, 4 or 5 hours a day, including Saturdays. We had like 7 hours. Then we had a final test, and I approved. So I got my proof of my validation, basically. That was 2011. Immediately, I already had my first company started. So
what was the company about?
Education as well. I created It was 2010, so don't laugh. I created a social network it was a private social network for schools, elementary schools, so kids could connect to each other while practicing reading. It was like a readers club or something like that. And then they had chances to earn some digital rewards. I remember QR codes being a thing back then, before pandemic. So it was pretty much like, oh, what the hell is this? How can I use it? But then pandemic showed us that it was very successful, right? So I started, as soon as I could communicate in English proficiently, I started connecting with people here because I wanted to learn how education was handled here and what technologies were developed. So I took some classes at MIT online, and I started learning. And I started, I have to say, probably growing my desire to come here and learn more about the ecosystem in general, not just startups and innovation and venture capital, but specifically technology for education. In 2014, I came for the first time. I went to San Francisco and the Bay Area in general. I met 2-3 VCs that invest in education, and I learned that my company was so far away from that reality. I was uninvestable. I would never receive money from them, probably.
Why not?
Not ready for it. Didn't know how to pitch. Didn't know how to explain what our company did.
So it wasn't about the product not being ready. It was about
me.
you.
Yes.
Not being able to tell your story.
Absolutely. I could tell you and could show you what I did, how we did it, the number of customers we had, because we were very successful. We were almost acquired by one of the largest publishers in Spain. We won several innovation competitions in the Spanish-speaking world, which was another league, totally different league. And then I said, dang, I want to play that league so badly. I need to get better at this. So I made my plans, and my goal was coming to the US at least twice a year, 3-4 weeks each time, and learning more, how the game is played here.
So you wanted to expand your company to the US market?
Always. But I have to say, it was very naive. I thought that my product was going to be also relevant here in the same way that I conceived it for Latin America. But clearly was
So it was
not the
targeted
same time.
at Spanish-speaking students?
No, I thought I said it was naive. I thought it was, I'm going to create an innovation that's going to work with English speakers as well. But then, you get older, you get probably wiser, or hopefully you get wiser, and you learn that you need to adequate your game plan depending on where you are. So with my second company, I started immediately with the mindset of starting for the Spanish-speaking world. Finally, it didn't come through because of some problems I had with bad decisions I made from the team confirmation, also some investors that I shouldn't have received money from, for instance. But then everything finally came through, and by meeting my current co-founder, the puzzle kind of assembled itself in front of us magically.
How did you meet your co-founder?
Innovation and startup event. There was this Canadian angel network that visited Chile. They invited 25 startups to pitch in front of them. Those who were accepted had the opportunity to spend other 2 days with them. They did workshops for fundraising, about networking, how to sell, how to marketing. It was very good, very good. And my co-founder's previous company and my previous company got accepted, and we made it to the finals. And we were both the only 2 companies in education, but we never met each other before. Such a small country, such a small market, and we never heard about each other. So it was very funny and weird at the same time. We shared a beer, and we noticed that trajectories were very similar, and we were very probably disappointed is the word, with the teams and the companies we had back then. And 2 more beers, and we noticed that we needed to work together, basically.
So
And
how
here
did
we
you
are.
merge the two companies?
We didn't, actually. We didn't. My previous
You
company...
started a new one?
We started a new one. My previous company finally disappeared because I didn't pay more attention to it. My co-founder back then also was sick of education. He wanted to start something new, and he went to start a new company in Mexico now in fintech. So he's doing very well. And my co-founder's previous company is still in the market. He just left. So he's not involved at all anymore. We started anew, basically.
Was it a new idea, or did you take ideas from both of your companies?
It was a combination of a little bit of everything. So it was always, I've always been obsessed with the lack of literacy in general, reading comprehension specifically. So, of course, my bias goes in that direction. And my co-founder's experience was on how you create a product that can combine both digital and physical. So we merged both into
and that's Beereaders?
Beereaders today. Yeah.
So tell me what it is. What's the product?
So we created this platform that improves Spanish literacy skills for native Spanish speakers, K-12 students. So it combines authentic Spanish content in a form of a short text that could be a piece of news, or it could be a tale, it could be a poem, or whole books. So teachers can assign books, part of our library. It could be also part of students' independent reading plan. Every single piece of content you read with us will have quizzes embedded. So we assess reading comprehension. We're now assessing also writing skills, and very soon speaking and listening too. It works as a supplemental tool in the US for dual language or bilingual programs, which has a little more than 4 million students enrolled in the United States, and there are other 100 million K-12 Spanish-speaking students in the rest of the world that could be our users, basically.
I have this stat from your website which says more than 50% of Spanish-speaking students do not understand what they read. And this severely affects nearly 100 million students in Latin America and Spain and the United States. How is it possible? It's not that they wouldn't be illiterate. They know how to read letters on a piece of paper, but they just don't understand what they read?
Correct.
How is it possible?
And those numbers were before pandemic. Now it's even worse. This morning it was a massive announcement from the Ministry of Education in Spain. Today is a new pandemic. It's over 80% of kids that don't understand what they read. And you have something even worse. 3rd, 4th graders can't read at all. So we are figuring out how to adjust our product offering to make sure we are also taking care of those kids. So there is something structural with the language. It's something related to both the language itself and the culture surrounding it.
How many Spanish-speaking students are in the United States
That
are learning in Spanish?
4 million kids.
4 million.
4 million kids. Overall, it's 25% of the total enrollment that is Latino. So it's around 13, 14 million students. Just 4 million of them are enrolled in those programs. Typically, it goes from K through 4th grade, 5th grade. So the sooner you graduate from those programs, the better. That's the ultimate goal that the education system has here in the US. Latin America, different story. So most of our countries speak Spanish natively, right? So in there, it's even worse. If you don't have good command by the age of 10, basically you're done. It's so hard to mitigate the problem. The learning gap will never be closed if we don't have an intervention at the very early stages of the literacy development process. So I was saying that it's a tough combination of probably some bad behaviors that we were taught when we were a child. So if you ask an average Latin American family, they would say, hey, education is so important. that it's my heritage. That's what I want to, when I leave this world, I'm going to give you this gift to you, my son, my grandson. That's the spirit. But actually how many hours you as a mother can allocate to help your kid, that's just a few amounts of families that are actually and actively doing something. So sometimes it's also a product of the way of life we have today, where most of families are so focused on producing money because it's the only thing we can do right now to keep alive, to keep paying mortgage or rent or whatever.
So you're saying it's the parents' fault, not the teacher's fault?
Well, teachers were educated under the same system. So they're also victims of this. They tend to replicate what they were taught in the first place. So it's just a little what they can do. Of course, there are exceptions. There are teachers that are doing great job. They are innovating all the time. But the lack of resources is so dramatic that they will never keep up. They can't keep up with the magnitude of the problem. That's the big thing here. On top of that, you have that the content creators, the companies that have been serving the education system in general have such a poor quality of content. The strategy,
you mean textbooks?
Textbooks is ridiculously poor. They print materials that are outdated, that have nothing to do with what kids experience in their normal lives today. Also, they just replicate over and over again the same learning strategies. It's a shame, to be honest. Those 2 or 3 companies come from Spain, so it's kind of a new way of colonizing Latin America. This time it's like, seriously, guys, you really want to keep us this uneducated? Is something on purpose? What's the matter here? What's wrong with you? What do you want to do? And they don't care. They ultimately they don't care. That's my perception. It's just
as long
a
as the
business.
schools are buying it, then why would they care?
And they close deals at a government level. So whatever the government of Peru is buying is gonna impact 7 million lives immediately. So they close a deal with Santillana, and that's it. Santillana saved the year, not the day, the year, with tens of millions of dollars in just one textbook, and that's it. Let's print it again for next year. That's the mindset. So they are doing little to nothing to actually improve the education system. It's not like here. You have even bigger corporations in the US and Europe. They made a lot of money printing paper, as these guys from Spain do. But they innovated. So you can see here how education changed.
How did they innovate it?
They created digital solutions for a digital life.
What does that mean?
Platforms for everything. Okay. Platform for everything. You can personalize the way kids learn. You can personalize the way teachers teach by using technology. And they've been leveraging that capability for decades now. That's something that it's a dream in Latin America. There's no standards, there's no obligations, and education systems are barely taking advantage of what exists. So it's complicated. It's a combination of factors. And it's not, literacy is like the tip of the iceberg. Of course, if you don't understand what you read, you will not be able to solve algebra problems, for instance.
Sure.
I always say it's the most pressing issue that part of the world has.
But even America has literacy problems with all this technology and all this progress we've made. Americans can't read. They can't write.
Actually, this week or late last week, the New York Department of Education announced a massive intervention program. There is a movement around the science of reading and how kids learn to read and how that needs to change urgently. Because there is big problems around it. But if you look at stats, always Afro-American and Latino populations in the U.S. lag behind, way behind the system. So you have a problem on top of another one that is even bigger.
So what can we do about it? Well, like, how can we solve it?
That's the $1 trillion question, I think.
Yeah.
How do we improve reading levels? I think, or our proposal at least, is let's make reading engaging and fun again. Let's make it an activity that people can do just for fun. It's if you are a reader, probably you read something that is useful to your life.
Mm-hmm.
But what about people that don't read at all? So this needs to be like a social movement where people is experiencing reading in so many different ways. I think social media most of the time don't help very much.
Yes.
Everything is so immediate that I've always paid attention to music videos. You can see the pattern. Nothing lasts more than 0.3, 0.5 seconds in
True.
front of your eyes. So it's like one dance after another, after another, after another. That's exactly the opposite that your brain needs, actually. That stimulus is way more than you can handle. So anxiety and everything that, came after that. While reading helps you get calm and focused, which is exactly what we need today.
Yeah.
So what we do is, first, our UI UX in terms of product is way over what you would see in other platforms. So we're bringing in all the time new techniques and concepts that most of the time come from the gaming industry or the fintech industry when it comes to dashboards, for instance. Fintech or health tech they do the best. Always. Best products are in those two industries, in my opinion. So we bring a lot of those best practices into our dashboards. Mm-hmm. We make sure our content looks excellent. It's like...
But your content is text.
But illustrations can help.
Mm-hmm.
And the topics we talk about and how those topics relate with your life. It's not just reading Harry Potter in Spanish and you were born in Colombia. So good luck trying to match those two realities. I was born in Bogota. Okay, what is my version of Harry Potter? Well,
so how do you change Harry Potter?
We don't change it. We just find the right stories that match with your life, with your background. So of course there are...
So you extract those stories?
No, we found authors and publishers, small, medium-sized publishers that create that type of art, because it is a piece of art, the way they created it. It's so beautiful. We just are a way to express and to communicate and to share what they created within a classroom. So we make sure that what you read with us, it's also engaging. It makes sense to your or your family's background. There's a cultural thing that must be connected. So that's another way. Of course, we are integrating some other more broadly accepted elements in gamification, for instance, the way Duolingo is showing how engagement can be driven. It's something we are learning about all the time. So we're doing more and more about that. And also integrating families in the process. So we created, because we know that if you have a family member that was a role model to you, then most likely you will follow the same pattern.
Yeah.
So we are involving families as well. We have this app that is interconnected with the rest of the product where parents or tutors can see what their kids are reading, what's the topic, what's the genre, so they can engage in a conversation at home. And they can incentivize kids to keep reading at home. So it's kind of closing the circle, surrounding the kid, because we know kids are the future, so we need to work with them, but we cannot forget adults in the process. So families, please, we need more engagement at home.
The problem is a lot of parents don't have the time to engage with their kids. Like my parents never had the time or never wanted to engage with me. Mm-hmm. I was, just educating myself on my own. Yep. So how do you make them engage?
It's actually very hard, as you said. It's very, very hard. But everybody has 1-2 minutes a day, especially if it's related to your children. So that's what we're trying to do. It's like a quick notification on your phone saying, Alejandra just completed this reading, thumbs up, or say something nice to her. She's going to appreciate it a lot. So small things like that. We understand that, especially Latino families, they are working 2-3 jobs a day.
Yeah.
So they have little time to spend on this or to invest in this type of things. So we try to make it easier for them as well. If we can just make a positive impact in 1 out of 100 cases, then we're winning. It's the hope we have
Yes,
for now.
100%. Why do kids not like reading these days? Is it because the books that are given to them at school are just boring? You know, the mandatory reading list that you have, that I had when I was young, it was terrible and I hated reading. Is it the format, right? Reading is not a natural skill for us. Like, we're meant to be speaking, listening, seeing, but reading is a new skill that we had to develop in the past 5,000 years or so. Or is it the lack of curiosity, lack of want to learn? That is the problem.
Yeah, so communication has 4 skills. All of them are interconnected. 2 of them are meant to produce content, and the other 2 to consume content. So reading and listening, by reading and listening, we are consuming content. By writing and speaking, we are producing content. You cannot read without write. You cannot speak without listen. It's a very beautiful dance between the 4 of them. So think of this. You were a child before school age. What were you doing? At home, in the park, in your backyard. You were exploring all day long. It was pure curiosity, literally. So humans, we are curious by nature. But something happened with school. We enter into this industrialized process, as Sir Ken Robinson said. It's batches of production, actually. So this is the batch 2020. So kids that were born between this year and this year, okay, guys, this is your turn. The system, it's boring. The learning process was designed to be boring, unfortunately. And most of the time, it's not connected with real life. Okay, guys, please turn off your iPhones, because we are learning now. What is that? What is that? So I'm asking you to pay attention. I'm asking you to learn something. But at the same time, I'm asking you to leave behind a very useful tool that will be in your hands for the rest of your life. So education is not connected to reality in that sense.
But then if you use iPhones for education, the majority of kids have social media platforms. How do you get around that social media distraction?
Well, we need to talk to the social media creators then. What's their intention? Sometimes you think these guys want us to be as dumb as we can.
That's, I think, true. That's accurate.
Have you heard about how TikTok is different in China than in the US or the rest of the world?
I have heard about it, yes.
Okay, so I think it's true, sadly.
Just for context, China is producing these scientific videos and a lot of the content is educational. Whereas in America, a lot of the content is brainless entertainment.
To say the least.
To say the least.
Yeah. So it's part of the game. It's part of the game. There are some ways to avoid these platforms to be active under certain circumstances altogether. But again, it's all about education. If you show kids how important is their time, I think you would not only be kind of teaching them how to manage their lives, but also they should try to understand how to make decisions in their lives. But problem is, again, teachers are victims of the same system. So probably they don't even notice what they are doing in the first place.
Yeah.
Because we're so dominated under the same bad things that are happening to us right now. But yeah, in our case, we know that colors and beautiful stories and nice avatars will not compete with the new engaging dance on TikTok ever. But we need to try at least. So that's something we're doing.
How do you explain to kids that reading is important? Why is reading important? They may say, well, I don't need to read a book. I can Google everything. If I want to know something, I go to Google, I read an article. Mm-hmm. Why do I need to spend 7 to 10 hours to read one book?
I would show them how the new technologies work, how you can maximize outcomes out of ChatGPT, for instance. And I would show them, guys, if you don't read, this thing here will replace you. If you want to harness this powerful thing here, you need to be an excellent writer, an even better thinker, and to do so, you need to be a master in reading first. Reading is not just scanning words or decoding letters. It's how you process the information within a text. Reading has 3 macro skills: the way you identify specific information, mm-hmm. the way you use 2 pieces of information and you make an assumption after that, and then how you reflect and evaluate what you just read. Those 3 main skills can help you to become a better thinker and a much better writer, and then you can harness these new technologies that will dominate our life from now on, basically.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned ChatGPT. Do you think ChatGPT is beneficial and kids should use it because it helps them to maybe understand different perspectives? It helps them learn how to think? Or do you think it's bad because it tells them what to think?
It's like any other technology, in my opinion. I mean, nobody could say that cars are not good. But even such a great thing in our human history is polluting the environment if we don't use it correctly. So ChatGPT is just another example. It can enhance the way you work, the way you produce results, of course, as a student, as a manager, as a salesperson, as a marketing person. It can enhance so many different aspects of your daily life. But again, you need to harness that power. Otherwise, it will dominate you and will make you dumber.
True. So how is this digital culture affecting our cognitive abilities? Obviously, one thing is we have shorter attention spans, mm-hmm. and reading is so difficult for most kids because they just can't pay attention this long. So what other examples would you have of how technology affects our cognitive ability?
So one thing is handwriting, the way you...
Handwriting,
I'm sorry. The way you use your phone to write everything. It's something teachers are concerned about.
Is writing important, though?
Of course it is.
Why?
Because you need to develop some specific moves with your fingers, with your hands, how it connects with your
you develop moves
brain.
On the keyboard.
But it's not the same. Remember drawing. When you draw something, your hand moves differently. That's something that you would not learn without that other part. So some areas in our brain may be turned off eventually. Well, that's part of evolution, you could say.
Yeah.
But is that something that we really want? I think the borderline there is like very thin, and we need to think a lot about it, the way we want to be in the next 1,000 years. Otherwise, we'll be more and more similar to machines. And the only thing that may be the differentiation between them and us is art and the way we can create something new.
But art is moving online. You can draw online these days. He can do anything online, right? So kids don't need handwriting in their day-to-day lives anymore. Work is online, on a keyboard, on a computer. I don't know. I think perhaps we should think about how to adjust to this new age.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. But there are some scientific evidence that prove we need to learn handwriting. Of course, those research might be updated in the near future, and will say exactly what you said. Hey, guys, this is like the little finger. We don't need it anymore. Probably. Who knows?
Yeah. It's funny because, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, scholars were worried about us going from speaking culture into the reading culture. They were worried what impact it would have on society.
Yeah.
And now we're worried what impact technology will have on us going from writing to, videos, just speaking and listening.
Yep.
So it's sort of like a cycle almost.
Yes, it is. Even more now with the text-to-speech or speech-to-text. It's going to be a very interesting century, I think, in that sense.
It is. I mean, reading takes an effort, right? It's difficult. You have to pay attention to every word you read. When you watch TV, you don't have to pay attention all the time. You can zone out for a minute or two, and it's fine. You'll catch up on the story, right? Like the visual aspect is really important. So I agree with you that graphics could perhaps help with reading comprehension, because like the brain accepts images in a different way than it accepts text, right?
Right. And again, it's you don't need to be a mechanical engineer to drive a car, but you still learn how to drive it.
Yeah.
I think it's the same with these new technologies. You need to learn how to drive their technology so the technology generates the results you want from it. And
so what type of content do you offer? Is it novels? Is it like fiction, nonfiction?
Everything. A little bit of everything, yes. Informational texts, pieces of news, recipes, lyrics,
so the kids
tales.
choose what type of text they're interested in, or you choose it for them?
It's like both, but at the beginning, kids have the option, and they always can change it afterwards. But we ask you what topics you like. Do you like drama? Do you like robots? Do you like dinosaurs? Do you like animals? What is that you like the best? And we will show you more and more of that content. But in between, we'll also give you access to other pieces of content or genres or topics that you didn't choose. So we are combining a little bit of what you have to read versus what you want to read.
Because reading a novel and fiction develops different sets of skills from reading nonfiction, right? If you read a novel, if you read science fiction, it develops your imagination perhaps better. If you read nonfiction, it develops your comprehension skills, analytical skills, critical thinking. You get a deep insight into a certain topic. So I think both are necessary, the combination of fiction and nonfiction.
Right.
Right.
That's right. So you were asking this before, but sometimes teachers assign books they know and they read already. They can assign something they don't know because they don't have a test created for that book. So that's very limiting at the same time. We try to avoid that by giving the teacher the chance to, hey, you don't need to read this book, but here is a short summary. And here is the way we're going to assess reading comprehension with this book.
Yeah.
So that saves you time. That opens doors for students so they can read different things that teachers maybe didn't know about before, be readers. So yeah, it's I think a combination of how you match interest with relevance.
That's a great point. How does your approach differ market to market? Is your approach different in the US versus Latin America?
Very different. In Latin America, first, the language is the native language, so the main purpose is to keep developing the language over and over again. Whereas here it's more, okay, guys, good for you. Spanish is your native language, but
Yeah.
we need to get you up to speed in English. So let's graduate you from your bilingual or dual language program. Science proved that the better you are in your native language, the highest the chance for you to acquire a second language successfully. So that's how we help. So the go-to-market and the marketing messaging is different from that perspective. Then it's B2B, so in that sense, it's pretty much the same everywhere. But then seasonality plays a role. Latin America, from Colombia to the south, the school year runs from the end of February till the first week of December, while here is very different.
Right.
Mexico, same calendar. Central America, same calendar in the US. So there are some nuances and differences in that sense too.
So how does licensing of the books work? Can you tell us about your business model, B2B, B2C, you said B2B. How do you charge schools? How much?
So it's B2B, but in some markets we also have a B2B2C component. In any case, the contact point for us and the customer is the school. So they pay between $1 per student per month in Latin America to $3-4 per student per month here in the US. It's more expensive here, of course. Then, it's an annual contract. We already have customers paying 2-3 year contracts now. The school has the option to pay us directly, or they can ask families to pay for the service. So in that sense, it's a B2B2C. So we had to learn
Does that
about
happen
that.
a lot, where families pay directly to you?
In some markets, yeah. Peru is the main market for us in that sense. Over 75% of revenue comes from B2B2C. So it was
Why is that? Why Peru?
It was an accident. One customer asked, "Hey, I really liked what you offer,
Yeah.
but I don't have the budget this year. If just the families could pay for it, well, why don't we try it? So let's build a payment gateway. Let's use some APIs." And 3 years after that, it's the main revenue stream in Peru.
I think even for parents who homeschool their kids, your tool could be very helpful.
Yep.
So that's sort of a B2C.
Actually, well, there are some people in this space that would say B2B in K-12 edtech is not a good idea, and I have to agree with them because it's very hard. But at the same time, I think if we are going to impact 100 million lives, then we cannot rely on the school system only. We need to find different ways. So that's why we're now launching a new version in 2.5 months, which will allow families to subscribe directly.
Do you have any program for adults as well? It's not just kids who struggle with literacy.
Of course, yeah. No, this problem is, you don't graduate from this problem, actually. There are some, I need to update my information on this, but before pandemic, regular first year student at law school would have like 45% of proficiency. After 5 years, when they graduated, proficiency didn't improve very much. It was kind of the same. And that guy was reading all day long.
Wow.
Law school, right?
Wow.
So yeah, this problem, you don't get rid of it so easily. What we do is for educators and for families right now. In the long-term vision, we think this company could become the most important one when it comes to improve literacy skills for Spanish speaking people in general. So yeah, we'd love to help also adults.
That's awesome. And in terms of your relationship with publishers, how does that work? You decide a book that you would like to have on your platform. You go to the publisher. How does that work?
Yeah, we have made a roadmap of the type of content we want. And then our editorial director goes literally country by country finding the talent. So the largest publisher we work with has no more than 300 books. So it's small, medium-sized, extremely
So finding the talent
boutique.
that writes a new book based on the content you like?
Or they already created some things we like.
Okay.
So we partner with content we like only. uh, luckily it has been very successful for us. It's not been hard. I think we benefit from all of these gaps that the big publishers left behind because of their strategy. So I have to say it's been the best thing ever working with these authors. You can see them on social media, like very proudly announcing, "Hey, my book is finally in the Beereaders library," and they tell the story behind the scenes, how they created or they came up with the original idea behind the book. So that's great. So they are helping also as brand ambassadors, and that's terrific. That's what we want.
Can you tell me some examples of the gamification features? So if I'm reading your book, what can I come across? How do you make it fun?
Okay, so at first we have background music, so it makes it more immersive. We also have read aloud features. Today we offer just 2 voices, a female and a male voice,
But then doesn't it sort of conflict with your purpose of reading comprehension?
Because I told you before, it's a dance. You can't read without
if kids just listen to it.
Yeah, but remember something else we said before. Many kids don't have a role model. Nobody has ever read for them. So they need someone, at least someone, that is reading for them. That's why this technology is so relevant. Also in the US, imagine kids that were born in the US, but families came from Nicaragua. So that family not necessarily had a good education in their home country, but they moved to the US. That household speaks Spanish at home. Therefore, these kids, from this example, they struggle with Spanish at home and they struggle with English in class. So who is going to give them the right model? So in that sense, the technology with this read aloud feature can help. We all need someone who is reading for us, at least once.
That's a good point.
So that's why we do that. It also has like a karaoke highlighting that is helping you to correlate in your mind the way it looks, the word, with the way it sounds, which is something very important as well. So we have that. We have quizzes embedded. So every time you answer a question correctly, you will earn experience points. Of course, you are making progress in the game. At the same time, you earn Bitcoins, which is our currency. With that Bitcoin, then you can exchange for new avatars, new skins. You can customize the way your platform looks like, the way the content looks like. You can also subscribe to new content if you like. For instance, we're adding now new magazines, science magazines. So you can, for 100 Bitcoins, receive every single Monday a new issue of this magazine, science magazine, things like that. We have, of course, the leaderboards and rankings, things like that, that, again, Duolingo proved to be very successful, so we're learning from them as well.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, magazines were still a thing. I used to read a lot of magazines. And I remember I loved the visuals. Right? Magazine is great because you get the content, but also the visuals, and that's important. In terms of education, what is the best country that, in terms of education, what is the best country that has a system where the kids are thriving, they make education fun? You must have done a lot of research on this.
Yeah, everybody talks about Finland. But it's complicated, I think. There's no just one single rule and one size fits all. That doesn't apply. Finland, it's, 10 million people, maybe less? So it's a small country. Therefore, whatever you do there is not necessarily replicable in a country like this one, for instance. So that's something you need to understand. Then social components. What about migration?
Yeah.
How many non-Finnish native speakers they have to teach?
Probably very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Then other people like Singapore a lot. We all know about the Singapore method for maths, for instance.
What is it?
It's the way they learn math. It's different than other parts of the world, or it was at least 20 years ago when it became a thing.
Yeah.
Then big cities in China also are performing much better than the rest of the world. But again, culture. So I think it's all about the way the society gets structured to make the education system successful. In here, because of the culture,
culture is important.
it's the most important part. It defines how education is going to be perceived. If you consistently underpay your educators, what's the message you are sending to the society? It's like, we don't care. Teachers, good for you. We don't care. Good luck. But if we change that, then the top students will want to become educators because it's the way they should.
Yeah.
It's probably the most important way to change a life for good, along with food and health, of course, or housing. But education is something that remains with you. Nobody can take away from you education, your education.
Yeah.
Right? So I think if we really want to address the problem in a country like this, we need to change the way the society perceives the process. If you keep consistently seeing, again, social media, music videos, movies, the incentives where they go, it's like super fast culture. We don't care the way you made your fortune. As long as you have money, good for you. We are going to celebrate you. And that's what you see. People want to open an OnlyFans account instead of getting a college degree.
Yeah.
Because it's an easy way to make money, of course. Not easy at all, but it's easy, if you know what I mean. So it's more than just the way the government wants to address it. It needs to be a society thing. We, as a culture,
We have to value knowledge,
right?
understanding.
Absolutely. We need to make core decisions there, tough decisions.
And I think teachers should also have a commission-based salary, where they're paid extra if the kid scores high on an exam. I'm not sure if it works already like this in the US.
Not sure. I just know that the better your students do, you'll get promotions. Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's exactly tied to like
salary.
a commission-based or salary.
I know that they have this elaborate feedback form at the end of the year, especially at universities. You submit feedback, and that then affects the salary of the professor, I believe. So that's a good thing. In terms of hiring, do you have employees? How many? How do you go about hiring? How do you go about remote working? We talked about it earlier.
So yeah, we are a team of 55 full-time.
Are they based here in Latin America?
Just 4 or 5 of us in the US. The rest is in Latin America. We all speak Spanish natively. That's our first language. Around a third of us speak English as well. Engineers, teachers, designers, editors, marketing people, sales people. Around half of us come from education. So actually, we're teachers in the classroom. We have offices in 5 countries now.
Wow, that's awesome.
We have Santiago, Chile, with the largest amount of team members, 23. Then Peru and Mexico, 10 each. Colombia, the newest office, with a couple people already, and the US. And we also have, those are commercial offices. Then we have like virtual offices in Venezuela and Costa Rica for
What is a virtual office?
Product development. We have an address, but it's not a physical space, actually.
Right.
So we have a lot of team members in both countries, but it's not like in Chile, for instance, where people actually goes to the office. That's not what happens in those countries. It's hard. It's hard. For the first time ever, our team leaders gathered in Chile in March.
Wow.
So we had what we called
Since 2020?
Yeah, ever since. A lot of people didn't see each other in person before. It was very fun. It was lovely. It was, I thought you were shorter or taller or whatever. So we gathered for a week, and we called it the summit. So we were there analyzing the results from last year, planning the next 2 years, celebrating, of course. fundraising and things like that. On a daily basis, of course, we use Slack. We try to have like all hands meetings once a month. We do stand-up meetings every day. We have thematic meetings for like sales or just marketing or just product development, or I don't know, we're developing a new website, so we have like that topic. So it's a lean organization in that sense, but as we grow, we needed more structure and sometimes bureaucracy, which is not fun, but needed. We have a board now, we have board meetings, we have a board of advisors. So it's like the baby's getting older, bigger, and sometimes the needs are not as fun as they were at the beginning, but it's still fun.
Yeah. What qualities do you look for when hiring? Especially when you have to do it online.
Mm-hmm. Flexibility, most of all. Flexibility is in a startup environment is what you appreciate the most. Because one day you're doing something, next day you're doing something different.
So flexibility not in terms of time, but in terms of skills?
And way of thinking.
Way of thinking.
Way of thinking. So to give you an example, our current product manager, he started with us in 2020, late 2020. And he was the first customer success rep in Chile. So, hey, what would you like to do with us in the next 3 years?
Yeah.
And he said, I just want to grow. I just want to learn. I just want to keep developing my skill set. Okay, what's your skill set today? Well, I speak English. I was a teacher for many years. I did 3-4 years of travel around the world. So I've been in like 25 different countries. And I did 1 year of engineering. Okay, that sounds like a great mix of skills and experiences. Next year, he was in charge of that team. 6 months after that, he said, hey, I love what we do here. I love talking to customers. Yeah. But I see myself working and leading the new version of our product. Okay, let's make it happen. So what do you think you need? Well, I know nothing about product management. So he enrolled in a program, a virtual program with Google or something like that.
Yeah.
For like 6-7 months. So one day he came back and said, hey, I completed it. Okay, let's do like a mini project. Okay. He was on that for like 2 or 3 weeks, something very small, like a new feature or something. A week later, the person we thought was going to lead product management didn't work. She didn't perform at all. So we had to lay her off. So, hey, it's your turn. Come here.
That's awesome.
Lead the troops. Or, sure about that? I don't have experience yet. Well, if you don't start, then you will never have experience. So, better now than never. So, he's being, for 9 months now, our product manager. Best decision we ever made. He's such a great guy to work with, flexible in the way that I described it to you. Willing to learn, willing to fail. No matter what. We are here, we're going to support you. If you just need to make a decision that didn't go the way you thought it was going to be, it's okay. We learned something. So that's what we look for all the time. That's the most successful case we have in that sense. And I'm very proud to say that we have 2 or 3 other people in the works in the same sense.
That's
people
amazing.
That started doing something very specific and they started growing and growing and growing. And today they can manage a team of 10 or something like that.
That's amazing. Giving people opportunities is so important. And startups are best at that. You mentioned fundraising, that you raised a seed round.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. How difficult was it? Was it from US investors, from Latin investors?
Yeah, we've raised total around $6 million altogether.
That's a big seed round, isn't it?
Well, I did 3 pre-seed rounds first, and then this seed round. So it's almost 6 altogether, including equity and some grants we won. So to keep it simple, I've been in this space for 12 years, and I've been in the US for 3. In the first 9 years, altogether, I raised no more than $700K. The first 4 months I was in the US, I raised 2 times that. So first pre-seed round, we did angels from Austin and from Hong Kong and from South America a little bit. Then some
Did
more...
you leverage connections?
Connections at the beginning. Connections, my co-founders' connections also, very importantly. And then I came here with an accelerator. The accelerator helped in that sense. So it was very good.
What accelerator?
It's a very boutique accelerator. It's not very big, which is good in that sense. It's called International Accelerator. They work just with international founders coming to the US. It's literally handpicked the way they choose their portfolio companies. So it's 4 or 5 companies a year tops. And it's a very good opportunity for companies that are pre-revenue, sometimes pre-product.
Yes.
But they know there is a big opportunity in the US and they just want to come here. So it's a very good opportunity for first, second timers probably that are willing to move to the US. That's their requisite. So during that first year, 2020, we raised around $1.2 million. The most important investor was AT&T. They gave us an equity investment and also a grant. Next year, we did around 600 more. We got Generator, ECMC Foundation indirectly. We got some impact funds like Sorensen out of Salt Lake City. And then we just did, we announced actually 2 weeks ago the closing of our $3.5 million seed round with Reinventure Capital, a social impact firm out of Boston, leading the round. And then 2 other impact funds from Latin America, Colombia, both of them. They both have money from the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. So it's big money from big firms that are supporting us, luckily, which I think sends a big, powerful message, not only to the edtech industry in Latin America, which of course is absolutely necessary because we have a lot of investors saying, hey, education is my thing, I love it, we need it, but then they don't invest in education, or when they do it, they end up funding companies that happen to work with schools, but their product is not actually content or educational. It's just another fintech, but serving schools. So it's great for in that sense, but also here in the US, the way that I think it sends a powerful message by supporting Spanish as a language, as a culture that needs more and more support. This is not public knowledge probably, but the US is the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world, just behind Mexico today. And some projections from the US Census Bureau show that by 2050, the US will surpass Mexico, becoming the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So I like to think of these investors as pioneers. They saw the opportunity way ahead of the wave. And hopefully Beereaders become the company that can help they can help other companies in the same space with the same motivation to raise more capital because we need it. We need more and more support for Latino people.
So for my audience, who is mainly early stage founders or aspiring founders, what lessons have you learned in your fundraising journey? You said in 2014 when you came, you tried pitching, didn't work, you didn't know how to do that. What advice do you have for people who pitch?
So at the beginning, I thought it was kind of any other sales process where it's basically a games number. So I have to pitch 100, so I'll get 20 meetings, then I'm going to get 2 investments. That was my approach for most of the fundraising process. But then I learned that, of course, that's important. But it's even more important the way you choose who you pitch for. And then when you ask yourself that question, you need to know very well, what are your core values? What are you looking for? What are you truly looking for? So I noticed that I don't like some type of investors. I don't like people that they believe they are the most important part of your company just because they gave you money and they
How do
feel
you figure that out, though?
the way they treat you is so evident. When you learn, when you know what things you like and what things you don't, then you start seeing people with other eyes. That was what happened to me. So in my view, I'm doing this because I truly believe in the impact of education as a way of changing lives.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of a mandate I have in my core mindset and spirit and everything. It's part of me. So I need people surrounding me that thinks in the same direction.
Yeah.
So when an investor thinks that his firm is the most important part of the equation, that's simply a person, an entity that cannot work with you. So I appreciate a lot when investors are humble, they are ambitious, but they understand that this industry has so many different complex aspects that you cannot handle. And they are patient, and they care for students and for educators. They truly believe in what you're doing. So that's something I pay a lot of attention. So to me, it's like doing the pre-due diligence on who the investor is going to be. Of course, there are other personal traits, like you need to be able to enjoy a conversation with your investor. If you like beer, then have a beer with them and see how things go, because the investor is going to be your first phone call when things go south. So you need to be able to trust your partner. Also, it's very important their experience they had before. How did they become an investor? What's their motivation behind? Did they ever work for a company like yours? Did they invest in other companies like yours? How did they help the other companies beyond money? Are they excellent at sales or assembling teams or team expansion? How they can help you beyond just giving you money? That's even more important at the early stages of the company, because there are some good check sizes that can help you with some like basic things, but in the end you will need someone that can pick up the phone and open doors for you as well. So then it's everything else that you can find everywhere today. What slides you need on the pitch deck, what should be on your data room for investors, what type of lawyers you need, what type of lawyers you don't want to work with. All of that is kind of playbook today, but some other like less probably structured things that are way less, we speak way less about them probably.
Do you pitch with a story, or is it mostly data driven when you fundraise?
A little bit of both. I always, for this round and previous rounds, I always showed the stat you mentioned before, 50%, blah, blah, blah. And that was shocking. And people's reaction is always the same. Why is that? How is that possible?
Yeah.
Come on. It means that if there are two people in this room, it means that I don't understand what I read. That's the reaction. At the beginning, I was like, yeah, that's true. And we can prove it right now. So I would open my laptop, I would show you a text, and I would ask you to read. Yeah. And then I would ask you 2 or 3 questions. I would prove you that you don't understand what you read.
Really?
Yeah. That was my first approach. It was very aggressive. Some people wouldn't feel very good about it.
So you make the investors look dumb?
Yeah. But
it
was not my purpose. Okay. I was showing them this is something that we live with every single day, and we don't even notice this thing. But hey, I sign contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts every Monday morning. Yeah, because someone else read it for you and approved what you are signing. It doesn't mean that you are fully capable or do it by yourself. So it was a little bit aggressive.
Yeah.
Then I changed to a more like social emotional approach where today I include my personal background. I say, hey, education changed my life. There are other 100 million kids waiting for an opportunity like the one I had. So what are you going to do about it? And that's the way we start now the conversation. That's why it's so important what I said before about values, because you don't want to be in a position where you are educating your investors about the problem very much. It's like they are already sensitive and they are aware of the situation. So you're basically talking about the solution and how you think things may develop after they make an investment.
As you said, it's a huge opportunity. Who are your competitors? Is anyone else working on this problem? How do you position yourself amongst your competitors?
In the US, the landscape is highly competitive because of a number of big companies doing beautiful work. Some of them with multi-million-dollar valuation already. And the main differentiator we offer is the authenticity of our content. So where most of them or all of them provide translated or trans-adapted versions, we offer authenticity from all over the Spanish-speaking world. That's the killer feature for us. Latin America, a bit different. There is not a lot of competitors. Printed books and PDFs is the most popular solution.
Yeah.
But then what we say is, let's not only personalize learning, let's also personalize teaching. So you are saving time to your educators, you are saving energy, they have more time to make decisions as opposed to just, doing tests for kids.
What general advice do you have to aspiring founders, startup founders? Could be anything.
There is one piece of advice I really like that I would love to have had back then.
Yeah.
I would go and work for a startup first. And I would try to learn the most different set of skills that I currently have. For instance, if I'm an engineer or a developer or a designer, I would try to expose myself to sales and marketing situations. So out of my comfort zone. Absolutely. That's something I would do. I would love to be like the executive assistant for a CEO in another company. And I would ask him or her to attend fundraising meetings. Hey, can I go with you? Can I take notes to you? Can I send your emails? I mean, whatever. Just let me do it. Even for free. 3 months.
Yes.
Intern.
Shadowing.
Yeah. That's something that I would love. I have received advice when I was an aspiring entrepreneur.
That's a good one.
There are things you will never learn in a different situation, just by doing and by imitation.
100%. Since you're in the education space, do you have any book recommendations? Anything fun you've read recently?
I really loved a book called The 100 Years Life. It talks about how life is changing for our society. Something mind-blowing is that kids born after 2016, I want to say, they have around 99.9% chances to live beyond 100 years. So the book invites you to think about life not in a linear way.
Yeah.
So today, you go to school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you go to work. And then retirement.
Yeah.
65, 60 years old, whatever. But now it's going to be, hey, I'm in my mid-40s. I want to go to school again. Oh, I'm an engineer. Now I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a designer. I want to be a dancer.
Yeah.
I want to be a chef. No, doesn't matter. You don't need to live just one life. So the book is very interesting in that sense. It shows you the way we should take care of our body and our mind, because life is going to be longer. And
Sure.
you don't want to have 60 and have some part of your body that is not working just because you didn't pay attention on time.
I agree. 100%.
So it was very, very intriguing the way the book presented that opportunity, I think. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
That's a good one. In the last minute or so, tell us, where can people find you?
I'm very hard to find, actually. I'm on LinkedIn,
Well,
of course.
I think you were pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wrong. LinkedIn is the best way, I think, because it's what I use the most. Twitter sometimes, where even though I'm mostly reading and following some trends, but that's pretty much it. Otherwise, if it's about the company, it's www.beereaders.com. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you are a teacher by chance, or you have a family member that is a teacher, an educator, let them know about us and how we can help Spanish-speaking kids to improve literacy skills.
I want to end with this quote. American biochemist, conservative activist and politician Art Robinson, you may have heard of him, said, "Education is what happens when a child interacts with a book." Right? That's a good one. We have to make books fun again, and I'm excited that you're making it happen. And thank you for coming on this podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.